My name is Melissa. I'm 25 years old. And on the night of my husband James's birthday party, he threw my gifts into the trash. Not by accident, not as a joke. He looked me in the eyes, in front of his friends, his family, our neighbors, and dropped the box into the garbage like it was worthless. Like I was worthless. I had spent 3 months planning that surprise. 3 months saving money quietly. 3 months believing that maybe, just maybe, this year he would look at me the way he did when we first got married. But instead, he laughed. Melissa always tries too hard, he said. And everyone laughed with him. I stood there smiling. Because that's what good wives do, right? They smile when their hearts are breaking. I told myself it was fine. Until his phone rang. One call. One name flashing on the screen. And suddenly, the laughter stopped. The color drained from James's face. The same man who threw my gifts away was now shaking. Because the voice on the other end wasn't just anyone. It was someone who knew a secret. A secret that would turn his birthday party. Into the night, his perfect world collapsed. And I didn't say a word. I just watched. Because sometimes, revenge doesn't scream. Sometimes, it answers the phone. If you're ready, I'll now begin. I used to believe love was about patience. About understanding. About standing beside your husband, even when he forgot to stand beside you. My name is Melissa. I'm 25 years old. And for 3 years, I kept telling myself that James's coldness was just stress. That his sharp words were only exhaustion. That his distance was temporary. But that night, his birthday party, forced me to see everything clearly. James always loved attention. When we first met, that confidence attracted me. He walked into rooms like they belonged to him. He spoke loudly, laughed louder, and people gravitated toward him. I mistook that charisma for strength. I mistook dominance for protection. After we got married, things didn't change overnight. They shifted quietly, like cracks forming beneath polished marble. He started correcting me in front of people. Melissa doesn't really understand business, he would say with a soft laugh. She's too sensitive. She overthinks everything. The room would laugh. And I would laugh too, because what else was I supposed to do? Embarrassment feels heavier when you're the only one carrying it. At home, it was different. There were no audiences there, no friends to impress, no family to perform for. At home, his silence was colder than his jokes. He stopped asking about my day. He stopped noticing when I dressed up. He stopped touching my hand, unless someone was watching. I told myself marriage goes through phases. I told myself real love isn't always butterflies. I told myself patience was loyalty. So when his birthday approached, I decided this year would be different. I wanted to remind him why he chose me. I wanted to remind him why I chose him. For 3 months, I planned everything quietly. I saved money from freelance projects he didn't even know I was doing. I even sold a gold bracelet my mother gave me. Not because I had to, but because I wanted the night to be perfect. I booked his favorite rooftop venue. I invited his closest friends. I arranged the elegant setup he always admired on social media. Warm golden lights, soft classy music. Every detail whispered luxury. And the gift? The gift was the most important part. James once mentioned investing in a private business venture with his friends. He said he didn't have enough liquid cash to secure his share. So I did something crazy. I used my savings and bought the share under his name. It wasn't just a present. It was trust. It was partnership. It was me saying, I believe in you, even when you don't believe in me. The night of the party, I wore a navy blue dress he once said looked decent on me. I styled my hair the way he liked, simple, elegant, undemanding. When guests started arriving, James was glowing. He thrived in admiration. Every handshake, every loud greeting, every clap on his back made him stand taller. I watched him from across the room, holding the wrapped gift box close to my chest. My heart was nervous, but hopeful. When it was finally time, I tapped my glass gently. I just want to say something for my husband, I began. My voice trembled, but I kept smiling. I spoke about growth, about partnership, about believing in someone's dreams. The room grew quiet. James looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. Then I handed him the box. Open it! Someone shouted. He laughed dramatically and tore the wrapping paper. When he saw the documents inside, his smile faded, but not in gratitude, in irritation. What is this? He asked flatly. I explained softly, still smiling. It's your investment share. You said you wanted it. He stared at the papers, then at me, and then he laughed. But this time, it wasn't charming. It was sharp. You really thought this was a good idea? The room shifted uncomfortably. My stomach tightened. James, it's under your name. I wanted to surprise you. He shook his head and looked at his friends. She's always doing extra things. She never understands timing. Someone chuckled nervously. I just wanted to support you, I whispered. And that's when it happened. He walked to the side table, lifted the entire gift box, documents and all, and dropped it into the trash can beside the bar. The sound wasn't loud, but it echoed in my chest. Next time, Melissa, he said casually, ask me before making financial decisions. You try too hard. The room laughed again. Not loudly, not cruelly, but enough. Enough to make me feel small. Enough to make me feel invisible. I stood there smiling, because breaking down in public would only prove his point. That I was too emotional. Inside, my heart felt like shattered glass. I had given him everything. Not just money. Not just effort, but dignity. And he threw it away like it meant nothing. The music resumed. Conversations restarted. People pretended nothing happened. James moved on effortlessly. Already telling another story. Already the center of attention again. And I stood beside the trash can, a second longer than I should have. Staring at the box. Staring at the symbol of my devotion. Lying between empty bottles and crumpled napkins. That was the moment something inside me changed. Not loudly. Not dramatically, but permanently. For the first time, I didn't feel heartbreak. I felt clarity. And then, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen, and the color drained from his face. The confident birthday king suddenly looked afraid. The music was still playing, but the air had changed. I could feel it. The laughter that once sounded loud and careless now felt distant, like it was happening underwater. James stood near the bar, holding his phone tightly in his hand. His jaw was locked. His eyes scanned the room as if searching for an escape route. I had seen him angry. I had seen him arrogant. I had even seen him bored. But I had never seen him nervous. Not like this. I stayed quiet, watching him carefully. He leaned toward his closest friend, Mark, and whispered something urgently. Mark's confident smile faded instantly. They both glanced toward the balcony, then back toward the guests. This wasn't a normal phone call. This wasn't a relative. This wasn't a casual business update. This was fear. And fear doesn't show up without a reason. I walked slowly toward the table, where the trash can still stood beside it. The same trash can holding my carefully wrapped gift. My sacrifice. My love. My humiliation. I bent down gracefully and lifted the box out without saying a word. A few guests noticed, but they quickly looked away. No one ever wants to involve themselves in marital tension. James saw me. He excused himself from Mark and strode toward me, forcing a tight smile for appearances. Melissa, he muttered under his breath. What are you doing? His tone was sharp, but lower now. Calculated. I met his eyes calmly, picking up what belongs to me. His nostrils flared. Don't start a scene. A scene. I almost laughed. He had thrown my gift into the trash in front of 50 people, but I was the one who might cause a scene? You already made one, I replied softly. His eyes flickered with irritation. But beneath it, I saw something else. Worry. We'll talk later, he said through clenched teeth. No, I answered gently, but firmly. We'll talk now. There was something in my voice that made him pause. For 3 years, I had avoided confrontation. I had chosen silence over arguments, peace over pride. But tonight, something inside me had hardened. His phone buzzed again. He glanced at the screen, and the color drained from his face for the second time. He declined the call quickly. That single action told me everything. James never ignored calls. Not when they were important. Not when money was involved. Who is it? I asked quietly. None of your business, he snapped too quickly. A few heads turned. Our small circle was no longer private. He forced a laugh, trying to recover. Work stuff, boring. But his hands were shaking. And James never shook. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. Is it about the investment? His eyes snapped to mine sharply. What do you know? There it was. Not denial. Not confusion. Defensiveness. I held his gaze steadily. Enough. His breathing grew heavier. Melissa, this is not the place. You're right, I said calmly. You chose this place. The music lowered as someone switched tracks, creating an almost cinematic silence between us. Mark approached cautiously. James, we need to step outside. James nodded quickly, but I spoke before he could move. Does it have to do with the investigation? The word landed like a bomb. Mark froze. James's face turned ghost white. What investigation? Mark asked slowly, his eyes darting between us. I didn't look away from my husband. The one connected to the business share, he was so embarrassed. About 5 minutes ago. Mark swallowed hard. James grabbed my arm lightly, not violently, but warningly. Stop. I gently removed his hand. Why? I asked quietly. Afraid of honesty? For the first time since our marriage, I saw it clearly. James wasn't powerful. He wasn't in control. He was cornered. And cornered men make mistakes. He leaned closer, his voice dangerously low. You have no idea what you're talking about. Then explain, I said simply. He opened his mouth, but no words came. That silence was louder than any confession. Mark stepped back slowly. James, you told me everything was handled. Handled. My heart didn't race anymore. It slowed. My emotions were no longer chaotic. They were precise, calculating. James ran a hand through his hair, frustration cracking through his polished exterior. It is handled, he muttered. It's just temporary pressure. Temporary pressure? That's what he used to call unpaid bills. That's what he called missed mortgage payments last year. That's what he called every red flag I ignored. My phone vibrated in my purse. I didn't check it. I didn't need to. Tonight wasn't about celebration. It was about revelation. James looked around at the guests, realizing whispers were beginning to form. The birthday king was losing his spotlight, and he hated that more than anything. Melissa, he said suddenly, his tone shifting into softer manipulation. You're tired. You're emotional. We'll fix this at home. There it was. The familiar script. Paint me unstable. Dismiss my clarity. Control the narrative. But something inside me refused to shrink this time. I smiled. Not sweet. Not wounded. Just calm. No, James, I said quietly. You fix things at home. When no one is watching. I looked around at the guests. Tonight, everyone's watching. His expression hardened. Mark cleared his throat awkwardly. Maybe we should reschedule this discussion. But it was too late. The perfect image had cracked, and everyone could see it. James looked at me one last time and searching. Searching for the old Melissa, the forgiving one, the quiet one, the woman who would protect his ego at her own expense. But she wasn't there anymore. Instead, he found someone steady, someone aware, someone who finally understood her worth. And that realization frightened him more than any phone call ever could. Because secrets can be buried. Money can be negotiated. Problems can be delayed. But a woman who stops loving blindly? That's a storm no man can control. As the music resumed, and the guests pretended to laugh again, I realized something powerful. Tonight wasn't the night my husband embarrassed me. Tonight was the night he exposed himself. And he had no idea how much I had already seen. By the time the last guest left, the silence in the house felt heavier than the music ever did. James didn't say a word during the drive home. Both hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. His jaw locked. His eyes fixed on the road, as if looking at me would make him lose control. I sat beside him quietly, holding the wrinkled documents in my lap. Not crying. Not shaking. Just thinking. For 3 years, I had feared arguments. But tonight, I feared nothing. When we entered the house, he finally exploded. What was that? He snapped, throwing his car keys onto the table. You embarrassed me. I closed the door gently behind me. I embarrassed you. My voice was calm. That seemed to anger him even more. You had no right to mention an investigation in front of everyone. He began pacing the living room, running his hands through his hair. You don't understand how business works. I looked at him steadily. Then explain it to me. He stopped pacing and faced me. But instead of confidence, I saw calculation. He was choosing his words carefully. It's just paperwork delays, he said. Some compliance issues. It happens. Does fraud just happen too? I asked quietly. His eyes darkened. Who have you been talking to? There it was again. Not denial. Deflection. Answer me, James. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The ticking clock on the wall sounded louder than our breathing. Finally, he exhaled sharply. "It's not what it looks like." I almost smiled. That sentence should be engraved on the walls of every broken marriage. "Then what is it?" He hesitated. And that hesitation told me more than any confession ever could. "Some funds were mismanaged," he admitted carefully. But I wasn't the only one involved. Mismanaged. Such a soft word. For betrayal. "And you knew before tonight?" I asked. He didn't answer directly. I was handling it. Handling it. He knew the business was under investigation. And he still let me spend my savings. He still watched me plan his party. He still let me hand him that gift in front of everyone, knowing it could collapse at any moment. "Why didn't you tell me?" My voice cracked slightly. Not from weakness, from realization. He looked frustrated. "Because you worry too much. You'd panic." I laughed softly. That hurt him more than tears ever could. "You're right," I said. "I did panic." He frowned. "What?" I stepped closer, holding up the documents. "I panicked when I sold my bracelet to buy this share. I panicked when I worked late nights to surprise you. I panicked when you threw it in the trash." He opened his mouth, but I continued. "But tonight?" I shook my head slowly. "I'm not panicking." He studied me carefully, like he was meeting a stranger. "Melissa, don't dramatize this." Dramatize. From the man who built his entire personality on performance. "You involved my name in something illegal," I said firmly. "That's not drama. That's reality." He walked toward me, lowering his voice into that familiar, persuasive tone. The one he used when convincing clients. "Listen to me. There's no proof tied directly to us. It's under control." "Us?" I repeated. "Or you?" The question lingered between us like smoke. He looked away first. That was answer enough. My phone buzzed again. This time I checked it. A message from an unknown number. "We need to discuss your statement tomorrow regarding Mr. Carter." My heart didn't race. It steadied. James noticed the shift in my expression. "Who is that?" he demanded. "None of your business," I replied calmly, mirroring his words from earlier. He stared at me, and in that moment he realized what I had just done. I had drawn a line. For the first time, I wasn't standing behind him. I was standing apart from him. "You wouldn't dare," he said quietly. There was no anger now. Just warning. Dare what? Make this worse. I held his gaze steadily. Worse than what? Public humiliation? Financial fraud? Lies? His breathing grew heavier. If this blows up, we both go down. That sentence revealed everything. Not love. Not concern. Self-preservation. He wasn't worried about me. He was worried about damage control. "No, James," I said softly. "If this blows up, you go down." The confidence drained from his face. He realized I wasn't threatening emotionally. I was stating a fact. "Melissa, we're married," he said desperately. "What happens to me happens to you." I shook my head slowly. "Marriage doesn't mean I carry your crimes." Silence filled the room again. But this time it felt different. Not tense. Certain. He tried one last time. "Think about our future." I nodded. "I am." That answer unsettled him more than anything else. Because for years, my future had revolved around him. His dreams. His image. His success. But tonight, I saw clearly. My future didn't depend on saving him. It depended on saving myself. I walked past him toward the bedroom. He didn't follow. "Where are you going?" he asked quietly. "To think," I answered. I closed the door gently behind me and leaned against it. My reflection in the mirror looked unfamiliar. Stronger. Sadder. Wiser. I touched my wedding ring slowly. For years, I believed loyalty meant silence. But loyalty without respect is just self-betrayal. And I was done betraying myself. The girl who smiled while her husband threw her gift in the trash was gone. In her place stood a woman who finally understood something powerful. Revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it's documentation. Sometimes it's testimony. Sometimes it's walking away at the exact moment they realize they need you most. As I lay in bed that night, listening to James pacing in the living room, I knew one thing clearly. The phone call didn't just change everything for him. It changed everything for me, because tomorrow wasn't about defending my husband. Tomorrow was about deciding whether he deserved to have one. Morning didn't feel like morning. It felt like judgment. Sunlight slipped through the curtains quietly, almost gently, as if the world didn't know a war had begun inside my home. I had been awake for hours. James hadn't slept. I could hear it in the uneven rhythm of his pacing, the occasional sigh, the way cabinets opened and closed without purpose. He was unraveling. And for once, I wasn't trying to hold him together. When I stepped out of the bedroom, he was sitting at the dining table staring at his phone. His eyes were red, not from tears. From fear, he looked up at me, searching for the version of Melissa who would sit beside him and whisper, "We'll fix this together." But that version had expired. "We need to talk," he said quietly. I poured myself a glass of water before answering. "We already did." His jaw tightened. "No, we need to talk properly." Properly, a strange word coming from a man who humiliated his wife publicly. "I have a meeting today," I said calmly. "With who?" "The people who called last night." His face went pale again. "Melissa, don't do anything stupid." Stupid. I used to hate that word. Now, it almost amused me. Telling the truth isn't stupid. He stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "You don't understand the consequences." "I understand them perfectly," I replied. "Do you?" Silence stretched between us. He ran both hands over his face, the confident mask finally slipping. "It got out of hand," he admitted in a low voice. "We thought we could move funds temporarily, replace them before audits. He was still hiding behind that word. "And when were you planning to tell me?" I asked. He didn't answer, because he never planned to. That realization didn't hurt anymore. It clarified everything. "You used my name," I continued. "You let me invest my savings into something you knew was collapsing." "I was going to fix it," he snapped defensively. "After my name was legally tied to fraud?" He had no response. My phone buzzed. It was time. I picked up my bag and walked toward the door. "Melissa," he said, softer now. "If you talk, they'll freeze everything. Our accounts. The house." I paused and looked at him steadily. "Our accounts?" I asked quietly. "Or the ones you hid?" His eyes widened. That was the moment he understood. I knew more than he thought. The late nights, the secret calls, the tension around money. I had ignored the signs once. "Not anymore." "You checked?" he asked carefully. "I learned," I replied. And that terrified him more than anger ever could. I left before he could say another word. The drive downtown felt strangely peaceful. The city moved normally. People crossed streets. Cars honked. Coffee shops opened. No one knew my marriage was collapsing. No one knew my husband's empire was cracking. But I did. And today, I would decide how it ended. The investigators were professional, direct. They showed me documents, transactions, transfers. My name appeared on forms I had never digitally signed. Authorizations I had never approved. James had been careful, but not careful enough. "Were you aware of these activities?" one of them asked. A month ago, I would have defended him instinctively. Today, I defended myself. "No," I said clearly. "I was not." They searched my expression for hesitation. There was none. I provided messages, bank records, the timeline of the investment gift. Everything aligned. My involvement ended the moment my savings were transferred. After that, everything was his. When the meeting ended, I felt lighter. Not because my marriage was ending, but because my silence was... Outside my phone rang. "James." I let it ring. Then again. And again. Finally, I answered. "What did you say?" he demanded. "The truth." Heavy breathing filled the line. "They're freezing assets," he said. "They're auditing everything." "I know." "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I closed my eyes briefly. Not in regret. In release. "Yes," I said calmly. "I saved myself." He went quiet. And in that silence, I heard it. The collapse of control. "They'll destroy me," he whispered. For the first time, he sounded small. I thought about the birthday party, the trash can, the laughter, the way he looked at me like I was insignificant. "You destroyed yourself," I replied softly. And I hung up. The following weeks moved quickly. Accounts investigated. Partners questioned. Mark turned cooperative almost immediately. James tried to negotiate, to minimize, to shift blame. But the paper trail was undeniable. Eventually, the charges were formalized: fraud, conspiracy, financial manipulation. I attended one hearing quietly, not as a wife defending her husband, but as a witness confirming facts. He avoided looking at me. When our eyes finally met across the courtroom, there was no arrogance left, no superiority, only regret. But regret isn't love, and it isn't enough. The divorce papers were simple. I didn't fight for revenge money. I didn't scream. I didn't humiliate him publicly the way he humiliated me. My revenge wasn't dramatic. It was precise. I walked away clean. Legally, financially, emotionally. The day I removed my wedding ring for the last time, I expected to feel broken. Instead, I felt powerful, not because he was losing everything, but because I finally stopped losing myself. Months later, I stood in a small apartment downtown. It wasn't luxurious, but it was mine. I rebuilt slowly. Freelance work turned into a stable consulting position. My confidence returned in ways I didn't recognize at first. I spoke without apologizing. I made decisions without fear. One evening, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. A journalist asking for comment regarding James Carter's sentencing. I declined politely. I didn't need public closure. I already had private peace. That night, I stood by my window, overlooking the city lights. And I thought about that birthday party, the trash can, the laughter, the phone call. If he hadn't thrown my gift away so carelessly, maybe I would have stayed blind longer. Maybe I would have defended him until I drowned with him. But humiliation has a strange power. It wakes you up. James thought throwing my gift in the trash would prove my insignificance. Instead, it exposed his weakness. The call he feared didn't destroy him alone. It revealed him. And revelation is the most irreversible form of justice. My name is Melissa. I'm 25 years old. And the night my husband tried to humiliate me was the night I became untouchable. Because sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't revenge at all. It's walking away while they're begging you to stay. And sometimes one phone call doesn't just change everything. It shows you who was never worth protecting in the first place. If this story touched your heart and reminded you that silence is not strength, then you already understand what Revenge Thoughts stands for. Subscribe to Revenge Thoughts for stories of betrayal, power, and unforgettable comebacks. Because sometimes the quietest revenge makes the loudest impact.